After the episode that revealed Jisoo's true identity, when we finally learned that she was actually Loulan, I noticed that some people began to dislike her. And honestly, I can understand where they're coming from. On that surface level, she did use Maomao, Xiaolan, and many others to clear her own path and to serve her hidden goal. But if you take a moment to look deeper, you begin to see that there is far more to her, like being kind and caring, choosing a greater good, even sacrificing herself for it, focusing straight on her goal, and scheming perfectly like the vixen she is to reach there. So every move Loulan made, no matter how cold or calculated it looks, had a reason. She was constantly aiming for something greater than herself. And I might be wrong, but I noticed that people from somewhat toxic households can easily understand her and the decisions that she made. So to understand her, we're going to start off with her childhood, and we know that she's a daughter of Shisho, the head of the Shi clan, and Shinmei, who, let's be honest, never really loved her. I mean, she can't even remember her face. Almost as far back as Loulan could recall, she had been painted with lipstick and face whitening powder, and whatever happiness or grief she had shown had been for her mother. And before she was 10, she learned the existence of her older sister, when one of the maids died of an extreme beating by her mother, and her father decided to take in the woman's child. Back then, when Loulan saw her mother arguing with her father, her hairs everywhere like an enraged devil, she was convinced that she was seeing hell itself.
私は間違えていた。お母様はどんどん醜くなる。
In the end, they took Suri in, but Shinmei continued to curse and abuse her. For Loulan, it was the strangest thing to see someone in such gorgeous clothing say such filthy words. But obviously, she was too young at that time. That's why she said nothing. However, she really wanted to see her older sister again. That's why sometimes she would sneak over to her place dressed as a maid. The same way she used her different identity in the inner palace. And like everyone there, her mother never recognized her either. And like every other maid, she made her work too. Though naturally she wasn't trained in those tasks and often got some good beating by Shinmei. But despite the blows, she still went to see her sister. And somehow, Shinmei never realized whom she was disciplining. She only saw a lowly servant, not her precious doll, who heed her every word. But that's the thing, she didn't just stop there. As Maomao says, Shinmei was the type of person who enjoyed tormenting people. So she didn't just discipline servants, she even punished her own daughter by pouring hot water on her. And she wasn't just physically abused, she probably went through worse mental abuse, as I'm sure she was constantly belittled and kept in fear. Shinmei even tormented her older sister Suri in front of Loulan, forcing her to witness family suffering who she could neither save nor comfort. With that type of a mother, Loulan learned to lie and hide. She faked ignorance on her sister, pretending not to see injustice that scarred her to her core. And the way Loulan just casually dropped all this information to Maomao could definitely mean that she had seen her mother be more cruel than this.
お母様なんだ、それ。
And I do think that Shisho loved Loulan dearly too, but his love for Shinmei was even stronger, and he could never stand up to her. As Prime Minister, he had great power in the court, but within his clan, he was no match for Shinmei. So he became passive, playing along with Shinmei's scheme and ignoring Loulan's sister / his first daughter as Shinmei ordered. He even tried to comfort Loulan by telling her that Shinmei wasn't always like this, that once she had been kind. But Loulan herself had no memory of such kindness. To Loulan, her father's words were hollow, since Shinmei's changed personality was all that she'd ever known. And this was the worst part, that no one stood up for them, not even their father. And the reason why he didn't do that could also be because he was waiting for Shinmei to forgive him and go back to the woman he knew and loved. Or maybe, just maybe, he had lost hope and was waiting to end it all. But for Loulan and Suri, I'm pretty sure they felt betrayed by their father. So psychologically, Loulan learned that her life was never her own. Any step toward independence might trigger Shinmei's wrath and disaster for her family. These scars help explain her later choices, as she took extreme measures to control what little she could. However, despite this darkness, Loulan did not entirely remain passive. As she grew up, she began to plan her own schemes, maybe to comfort her yearning for control or to protect the few people that she truly cared about. Plus, she had good days. She had her sister with her, she had her hobbies, her obsessive interest. She smiled bright like a son, even made friends that cared about her. And that's what I really loved about her character. And when at last the She clan rebellion fell apart, she quietly became the mastermind of her own. She used her secret identity to gather information and even made a deal with Jinshi. She arranged for a resurrection medicine to be saved for the She children, negotiating their survival even as the clan was destroyed. For her relationship with her father, some might argue that she could have stopped him earlier so he could have lived. But I think that it was already too late. Shishu probably had already made up his mind. And Loulan knew that he planned to be the villain, that he aimed to become the necessary evil, bringing all the country's corruption together in one place. She knew all about his plan and she let him roll with it. Because I think she was a character who'd learned to choose greater good. And I have seen the same pattern in her a lot of other times too. Or maybe she intentionally sacrificed herself and let her father do whatever he wants to stop Shinmei's evil plan. Maybe she allowed the rebellion to happen because it was the only way to get rid of the bad people and save the innocent ones. And she saw the failed rebellion as a chance to negotiate. She could give their future plan out to Jinshi in hopes that the emperor might forgive the innocents. In this view, her tragic end and final actions, including scarring Jinshi, dancing during the gunfire, and laughing as she fell, are seen not as madness or useless act, but as a solid victory. However, despite all that, in my opinion, I really don't think that she was that bad of a daughter. And her scarring Jinshi's face, as her mother had always wished, just proves that. And not to mention that she gives her father a heads up when the army come closer to their fortress, urging him to take action and play his part till the end. Also, she didn't technically kill her mother. It was Shinmei's own hatred that drove her to pull the trigger on her own daughter. Good thing the FIFA malfunctioned and blasted on her own face. By the way, it was the same gun that she had used on Jinshi to kidnap him, which brings us to the part where I might brag about how smart she was and how she always plans ahead. So back at that time, she had known the possibility that he could take the gun from her and use it on her instead. That's why she was carrying the one that did not work properly. And if he had refused to go into the secret passage with her and had used the gun, it would have exploded on his face instead. Either way, if she knew everything about Jinshi, I think she did him a big favor by scarring his face. Because as Maomao says, it takes away a lot of attention from his charm and brings more toward his actual self. And Loulan wasn't just intelligent, she was kind and considerate. Because when Xiaolon's contract in the inner palace was ending, she had the influence to secure her a new position within the palace. Instead, she took Maomao and Xiaolon to a bathhouse where consorts often visited. This allowed Xiaolon to make her own connections and find opportunities independently. And if you are wondering, because of her, Xiaolon eventually did find a job, but it was outside the inner palace. However, she did work for a noble family. And she also writes letters to Maomao every now and then. But the funny part is that she never writes her address. So Maomao doesn't even know where she's working. And when Jinshi asked if he should help her find the address, she denies. Because honestly, by that volume, a lot is going on in Maomao's life. Okay, back to Loulan. I'm pretty sure you remember the creepy story that she told. The one about a monk who stayed in the couple's house at night, where he heard sounds like bells, the couple arguing, the wife turning evil, and then at the end he found 2 dead insects outside of their house. Now as we move ahead, we got to know that the insects in that story are based on real bugs that make spell-like noises, and in nature, after giving birth, the female of that species eats the male. So Loulan was kind of comparing herself and her situation to that story at that time, because her mother wanted her to give birth to the emperor's child, as she comes from a special bloodline. And because of that bloodline, her mother, Shinmei, saw her as nothing but a tool to gain power. But for Loulan, it means that she would have to use the emperor just like the female insect used the male, only to destroy him afterwards. And that's exactly what she was afraid of. She didn't want it to become like her mother, a woman who only married her father to have a child and then had no use of him. So she took matters into her own hands, as around the area where she liked to catch bugs, there were trees and herbs like lantern plants and white blossoms. They weren't just pretty flowers, they were actually used to make natural medicine that can stop pregnancies. That means that Loulan was probably using those plants to make sure she wouldn't get pregnant. This is further confirmed in the Apothecary Diaries GX manga too, that clearly revealed that the emperor had been visiting her and that she had been taking these ingredients to prevent having a child. Now finally, let's talk about her relationship with Maomao. When she kidnapped her, she was pretty close to Maomao.
Maomao, I'm so sorry.
And I'm pretty sure she knew that Mama would feel betrayed afterwards and that it would be more difficult to take her with them, also that it would put Mama in a tough position. But she goes on with her plan because she knew it would lead to an investigation and that she would need her and her apothecary skills to take care of the children later. However, this isn't all. Loulan was very kind. Despite going through a cruel world, she never herself turned bitter. As I was noticing how she adored Xiaoyu and the other kids, and how she mixed the resurrection medicine with the juice to give to the children while distracting them. But I don't get why she was never straightforward. Like when speaking to Maomao, she compares the children with the insects in winter, and then she asks Jinshi, "You will let the dead lie then?" instead of just telling them to take care of the children. Maybe it's something that she picks up as a kid, or maybe it was just her fear. But I guess it did make her more interesting. Back to Momo and her. She's a sweet character, and in one way or another, she knows our cat a lot. Maybe because Momo is similar to her older sister, Tsuri, or maybe she's just good at treating people and understanding them. Like here, she just knows that Momo wouldn't leave until she reads all the books. How she feeds her food because she knew her obsession wouldn't allow it, and she even dresses her up. Though I won't say that she was the greatest friend that Momo had, but she was definitely someone who understands her and got closer to her in short amount of time. I loved when Shinmei sentenced her to a brutal punishment, but Loulan made sure that she was sent to the Devon instead, which was a pit full of snakes, frogs, and bugs. It sounds harsh, but Loulan knew Momo could handle it. And at first, it looked like Momo was deeply conflicted over her true identity, as part of her might felt betrayed that her friend had secrets, but the other part definitely cared about her. In fact, we saw how Momo was terribly upset by the news of Loulan's official death. She even wished that they would never find her body, keeping her hopes high that her friend might still be alive. And not to mention, Momo literally cried for her friends. And it's really a big deal because Momo doesn't really cry much from a young age. So in short, she didn't hate Loulan, neither did she dislike her. So if you have some negative thoughts about Loulan because of Momo, cut them out, because Momo gets that Loulan had desperate times going on for her. And not only does she understand her, but she also decides to be a part of her chaos. In the end though, she wishes for Loulan to run away, leaving all the politics and everything behind. But Loulan decides to stay. And when she left Momo with the kids, Momo gave her the hair stick of Jinshi that she'd been carrying, asking her to return it back to her someday. This part gets me every time, because despite everything, it becomes clear that Momo cared about Loulan, and that she might be the first goodbye Momo ever had. But I also find it interesting that right after when Momo asked Loulan to give the hair stick back to her someday, Loulan instantly said that she was going to seal it. At first I thought it was a joke, but then that's exactly what Loulan does. I was a little taken back because Momo gave it to her as a vow/prayer and she sold that away, meaning in a way that she cut off ties with her friend, but at the same time maybe she silently passed it on to Momo, hoping that it would find her someday, since she can't really give it back to her by herself. Though I was really happy it was the same hair stick that saved her life from a fatal injury, and she ends up surviving. Further, I'd say that Momo's prayer did actually got answered, and that I really wish to see that hair stick again. I mean, it's been through a lot. First, it was a gift from Jinshi to Momo, which represented a token of favor and affection. Then Momo gifted it to Loulan, which signifies trust and friendship. By the epilogue, we see Loulan as a girl with a new name, Tamomo, fleeing from the north to reach to the other side of the ocean. And in that moment, she sold Momo's hairpin. Well, she actually traded for another pin with an insect design that quite looked like cicada. And now in my eyes, that wasn't a betrayal, but a quiet turning of the page. Additional information. Cicadas are a classic symbol of rebirth and immortality in Chinese lore. They spend years underground, then emerge, shed their old shells, and start new lives. And to be fair, it did fit her situation. In the end though, I do want to say that there are some things that didn't make much sense to me. Like when she gave Jinshi the piece of paper with information about the upcoming plague, she said that she was actually planning to use it as a token for her life. But she decides against it and asked for 2 favors instead. That left me wondering why she did not choose to live. So I wonder if being an actress and dying while dancing and smiling, that appealing to her. I'm not sure. You tell me your thoughts. Plus there were other questions about her that I wished I could get more information about. But as Jinshi said to Mama, we have lost the chance of understanding her. To be very honest, I just made this video because I feel like after this season is over, nobody is going to talk much about her. And I love her character so much.
Gotcha!
Alright, that was it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for listening to me. Take care of yourself and goodbye.
No, you'll never be the same. I don't really wanna hurt you, but I can't control the pain. If you're sticking by my side, maybe we could be okay. Okay, maybe you could be the change.